Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead. Ranchers are under increasing pressure to get more from their land, yet many decisions that drive grazing performance are still managed in people's heads and on spreadsheets. As operations grow more complex, a clearer picture in pasture performance and grazing outcomes is something that is increasingly important. Joining us today to talk about a new solution for pasture management and performance is Toby Hurley, Director of Product at Halter. Welcome, Toby. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
So let's start things off by having you tell us a bit about Halter and your role with the company.
Yeah, so Halter, we're a farm operating system focused on pasture-based cattle operations. We have a GPS-enabled solar power collar that goes on each animal, and we pair that with a mobile application and a web application that does everything from virtually fencing and remotely shifting animals to now managing data around those animals and around the land and the pastures that are being grazed.
Exactly what we're going to talk about here today. Beef Pro. It's a new product that you folks have launched. And as I think you just indicated here, it gets a little bit into that, or a lot maybe, into that data side of things. Talk to us about how that works and how that integrates into your existing platforms.
Yeah, so the product that we've been delivering to ranchers to date has really been focused on the fencing and shifting component of the product. And now we're really looking to establish Halter as a performance management platform rather than just a virtual fencing tool. So Beef Pro introduces a lot more data into Halter about the animals, their stock units and their feed demand, as well as data around the land. So things around carrying capacity and satellite imagery to provide visibility of forage. And when you bring those two things together and pair them with the collar, it becomes a lot more powerful in terms of the decision-making process, and then being able to keep a really accurate record of what is happening from pasture to pasture across the ranch, across the year, using that data that's coming off of the collars.
I guess they could say there's such thing as too much data, but having it is always a good thing and helps you to make better decisions. I would think that animal behavior monitoring, is that one of the components perhaps that this is really looking at and having you zero in on, maybe there's an issue with even down to like a single animal or especially probably a herd. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so one of the key pieces of data that we're introducing with Beef Pro is real-time monitoring of the behavioral patterns of every individual animal, but also at a group or at a herd level. So be that information about how much time they're spending grazing versus lying or standing or walking or even ruminating, chewing their cud, which is obviously a really important part of turning grass into product and performance, which is the goal. So ranchers are able to drill into that for a group, as you said, to understand a bit better how their management decisions might be impacting the animals, but they can also drill in a layer deeper again into an individual, whether that's to understand something they might have observed visually or the other way around. So it definitely gives a layer of insight into their animals that most ranchers have never had before.
What about insight into pasture utilization, and also that containment of input costs? Does it allow ranchers a lot more opportunity to manage things at the pasture level?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously long term, there's a huge amount of benefit for soil health, for land health, and for pasture productivity through rotational grazing and managing the land better. But the immediate lever or the immediate unlock that is available to most ranchers is actually just utilizing the available feed or forage that they have available to them. And through the addition of data or pulling that data together, it puts ranchers in a better position to get that balance right in terms of what their land can support versus what their animals need. And then I think one of the most exciting, certainly when you show ranchers, one of the most exciting parts of Beef Pro is being able to see a grazing heat map of exactly which parts of the ranch have been grazed heavier than others and how much feed has been taken out of one area versus another, which becomes a real-time picture almost of which areas are maybe being grazed too hard, and that could be damaging the health of the soil, versus where those utilization opportunities still exist. And if you can utilize your forage better and be less reliant on imported supplementary feed, that is something that goes direct to the bottom line of these businesses. So it's a very important part of this product for us.
Really helps to minimize some overgrazing and probably undergrazing as well.
Yeah, certainly. I think that if you can bring those two things into balance, it's a surefire way to put yourself in a good position to manage the land better, which is such a core ingredient to performance for these ranchers.
Now, one thing we always hear when we talk about new technology and technology that's connected, through Wi-Fi or whatever, is that issue of connectivity. So what are some of the options that are available for ranchers? Has this been, improving here in recent times? So ranchers should, hey, maybe I wasn't able to do it before, now I can. What should they look at and what should they know?
Yeah, so that's been a really massive area of investment and focus for us, particularly in a market like the United States, where there is so much variation in how extensive the land is and variation in topography. So in April, we launched a direct-to-satellite version of Halter in partnership with T-Mobile, and that's powered by Starlink, which essentially means that you no longer need base stations or towers to run the Halter system, which, to put it short, really means that Halter can run anywhere in the United States, and that terrain and topography and extensiveness no longer becomes a barrier to being able to leverage this technology, which is incredibly exciting for us.
How does your technology, there's a couple different technologies out there. How does it compare? How does a rancher go about evaluating, maybe which virtual fencing company I want to work with, or which platform I want to be with? How best to go about that analysis?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the philosophy that we have at Halter is very much the collar and the core virtual fencing and shifting capabilities, which is where most of the other collar companies are playing. That's very much just the unlock or the foot in the door, so to speak. And most of our research going forward and our R&D is very much into things like Beef Pro, which is how we build a really advanced and sophisticated operating system around the collar and the fencing, and things like direct to satellite also become key areas for us to invest in. So every operation is different, but I think most ranchers, when they're making an investment like this, are thinking very much long term. This isn't a short-term band-aid fix to a problem they have. This is a total mindset shift in how they want to run their ranch and make it something that can be productive and profitable and sustainable for many years to come. And I think that's the same way that we think about our product, and our investment and product development is very focused on that long-term view as well. So that's how I encourage ranchers to think about it when they're deciding to invest in technology like this.
So let's look a little longer term. What do you see? How do you see this evolving? This technology or this concept of virtual fencing? Do you have any just kind of wild thoughts, perhaps?
Yeah. So as I said, we're always continuing to invest in our core product and our core functionality, and there's always opportunities from our perspective to make these things better and more effective. But I think long term, the focus will very much be on how we take something like Beef Pro and expand on it further, more on the animal side. There are things like reproductive health and calving and all of these types of things that happen in the life cycle of an animal. And on the pasture and the land side, there's a huge amount more data and insight that can be extracted out of that, whether it's through our collars or through other sensors like satellites and drones. So I think those are just examples of the various ways in which a product like Halter can and will evolve. But I think the main thing for us is not wanting to lose sight on the things that matter most to ranchers. And that is fundamentally, how can they be good stewards of their land and their animals and run their businesses in the most effective way they can, and hopefully continue to do so for many generations to come. So that very much grounds how we think about the future.
Any final thoughts to leave our audience with here today, Toby?
Yeah, I think the main thing that I've learned, obviously I'm based in New Zealand, working with US ranchers, is just the amount of engagement and excitement in technology generally, but particularly some of the things that Halter are doing. And momentum in the United States has been fantastic. Having customers now in more than half of the states, and yeah, it just fills me and the wider Halter team with a huge amount of excitement and optimism for the future of ranching in the US.
It's always neat to see new technology come into the business and watch it evolve. So Toby Hurley of Halter, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for joining us and sharing your insight.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you very much.
Likewise, we appreciate all of you and our audience for tuning in. Until next time, for Feedstuffs, I'm Sarah Muirhead.